Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we have another very interesting figure to check out here. We've got another of these Simba figures, which I had recently taken a look at the Jurassic World Dominion style Giganotosaurus. This time, we've got a Carnotaurus, and it is probably one of the most unique looking Carnotaurus I've seen in quite a while, but yet again I think it's pretty obvious that they've based this off of the Jurassic World version. Even if the sculpt looks pretty far off, the color scheme is very much so the type of color scheme you see in Jurassic World. Not Dominion or anything like that, actually, I should say. The Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom Carnotaurus is what I would say that this kind of resembles. Also, you might notice that I've kind of done things a little bit differently with this review as far as my backdrop. What is normally here is just a solid backdrop. I've left the stuff that I have in the background behind what is normally hiding behind the backdrop, which obviously you can see some fossil replicas and stuff back there. I've left those out just to see if you guys like this look any more so than the other look with the backdrop. What do you prefer? Do you prefer it like this, or do you prefer the backdrop? But again, I don't know if the dinosaur kind of meshes with the backdrop too much or not. It's something that I'm curious to hear from you guys. But you can see the Carnotaurus again looks pretty cool, so let's go ahead, pop this out of the packaging here, this plastic packaging, and I'll jump straight to a closer look and check it out from there. So starting up here at the head sculpt of the Carnotaurus, you can see it definitely has a unique look to it. It doesn't quite resemble the Jurassic World version of the Carnotaurus. It also doesn't quite resemble an accurate version of a Carnotaurus. It does have its own unique look to it, almost again, which is the same thing I said for the Giganotosaurus. It almost has like a movie monster from like the 70s type of a look. If a Carnotaurus were transported back to the 70s and given the movie treatment, I feel like it would kind of look something similar to this. But you can see again, the sculpt looks okay. It's got some decent detail here on the face. We also have a dark wash present, which is the same thing we saw on the Giganotosaurus. We can see the nostrils right there. The eye paint again looks okay. They kind of like outline the eyes with the yellowish tone and then paint the eye itself, because you can see a black there within the yellow, so it's like they do it purposely, but it's almost like something you would normally consider sloppiness. But again, I think it's done on purpose, which shows you that they do actually have, outside of the teeth of these figures, usually some pretty precise paintwork. And it also has a little bit of a gloss coat to it, which is nice to see. As you lead down to the lower jaw does have a lighter tone, kind of like a tan, but there are still some reddish tints down there. And obviously the face primarily has a red tone with a dark wash present. And then we also have some darker browns that kind of run through the course of the upper part of the dinosaur and lead down here on the side of the face, like right here behind the eye, and also run down the front of the snout of the Carnotaurus down here into the front of the snout. And you can see that there's a little chip of paint on the tip of the horn of mine, but the horn looks okay, and it also actually sports some nice detail. And as you can see, when we let the light hit it, has a bit of a satin shine to it as well, and it is painted with a dark brown, also given the dark wash. The mouth does articulate, the jaw opens pretty wide, and that gives us a nice chance to see how sloppy the teeth look, because they absolutely look sloppy. The sculpt and paint of the teeth doesn't look good. It looks just like it did with the Giganotosaurus, honestly, and with most Adventure Force dinosaurs, very similar to that, where the teeth honestly look like they get probably the worst treatment as far as the sculpting and painting of these figures go. They're very, very sloppy, which you can see. We also have the tongue sculpted out there on the inside of the mouth. It's sticking up there, but the insides of the mouths of these figures are always very dark, so it's actually hard to really see it and pick up on the detailing. It's a very dark tone of color that we have for the tongue in there, but if my camera would focus on it, you can kind of see it. It's got some okay texturing and stuff. You can see the throat back there, and everything seems to have a little bit of a gloss coat to it on the inside of the mouth as well. Just like with the Giga, the inside of the mouth on the upper side goes up really far for some reason, but you can kind of see it shining there. You can see the skin here on the side of the mouth also sports that sort of gloss coat to it, which is pretty cool. And then, of course, the jaw does work pretty decently. Kind of feels like it could be maybe a little loose, but for right now, it's working okay. That's as far closed as the mouth gets, though. Again, the teeth kind of like stop it from closing, which was the same thing that happened with the Giganotosaurus. You do have some ridges here here on the top of the head that pick up and follow along the course of the spinal column, as well as those rows of osteoderms like we usually see for Carnotaurus. You can see some wrinkling increasing to the skin in the lower part of the neck down into the throat. Pretty smooth transition to that lighter tone of the underbelly. You can also see the dark wash present here on the underside, giving the dinosaur kind of a dirty look, which I do sort of like. And we continue to have those brownish tones following along the upper side of the dinosaur, and then just kind of striping and spotting down here through the side of the dinosaur, which is very, very Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom-ish as far as that color scheme goes. As you move down into the arms are pretty small, like you would want to see for a Carnotaurus, maybe a little bit too big. They probably should be a little smaller, but you can see the fingers are sculpted out, and shockingly, they actually don't seem to have nail paint. I don't know, it's hard to tell if they actually sculpted fingernails. Kind of looks like they sculpted fingernails. Carnotaurus doesn't actually have nails, so if they did not in fact sculpt fingernails, I'm pretty impressed by that aspect, because obviously the figure is very much so not an accurate Carnotaurus, so it would be pretty weird for them to capture that one area of accuracy on the figure. But it looks okay, I guess, as far as that goes. We're not really going to judge too much as far as scientific accuracy goes, though, because the figure and the design is obviously very exaggerated and not meant to be accurate. As you move along, though, you can see the scale detail looks fairly decent for what it is, and the paintwork continues to actually look really quite nice. You have some muscle definition here in the thigh. As you move down, you can see the lighter tone following along the back of the leg, the reddish tones showing up here in the front. Even the lighter tone actually overtakes the knee, so it kind of is like a little sporadic as far as the placement, but it does return and overtake the entire foot sculpt down here. You can see some scoots running down the toes, again some nice glossy black paint for the nails, and we do have the dew claws, very sloppily painted, but they are painted. And then you lead up here into the tail. You can see some skin wrinkling increasing there off of the back of the thigh. You can also see that same thing in front of the thigh. But as you lead out through the length of the tail, you continue to have that brown, you continue to have the red, and that lighter tone of the underside as you lead out. But the darker brown here does disappear, and then we basically have that reddish tone for the remainder of the tail. The ridges follow along the top of the spinal column, again leading out into the tail. The osteoderms that have those rows of osteoderms following along the side do disappear as you lead out toward the tail. The tail has a little bit of a curve to it. The tail is definitely a bit on the short side, but just looking at the figure from the side, you can very clearly see that the proportions are not well done. Same deal we saw for the Giganotosaurus. And then when you take a look at the dinosaur from the opposing side, everything is mostly going to look the same, because there's not really much in the way of movement shown on the dinosaur. Again, when it comes to the positioning, you can see it's pretty straightforward. The head doesn't have any turns or anything. The arms are in pretty close to the same position on each side. The leg is taking a step forward over here, more so than what we saw on the other side. So that's like the only really big difference. You can see the leg looks pretty decent. More precise when it comes to the paintwork on this side, though. The red was kind of broken up on the other side, whereas the leg primarily is a lot more red on this side compared to the initial side. The nails are very sloppily painted, though. You can see that these nails barely got any paint at all on them. It's an okay looking foot sculpt, though. But as you lead out, the tail also has a little bit of a curve kind of heading in our direction, which might give it a slight different look compared to the initial side. Some okay detailing here on the underside of the figure as well. But definitely a neat looking figure, even if it's far from an accurate version of a Carnotaurus. He is a pretty neat kind of exaggerated, almost movie monster style version of a Carnotaurus. One downside for the figure, though, is it doesn't stand too well. It's standing currently, but it does have a habit of falling a lot, and that's like as far forward as you can lean the figure, so you can't get it down in a more natural positioning. It's kind of facing upright, and that causes it to look a little bit ugly, but it's not the end of the world, I guess. You can see how it's very prone to falling. If you try to position the legs, like, it's just always falling. Unless you get it in like this upright stance, that's like the best pose I think that you can get it in when it comes to the ability to stand, when it comes to its balance. So, I mean, it's not the best thing in the world when it comes to that. As far as the size goes, though, for a length from the snout to the tail, you're looking at a little over 7¼ inches. or a little over 18.5 centimeters, just like a hair over. And then for a height, in the position it stands most naturally, or not naturally, but stands best in, you are looking at about the 4 and a little over 4¼ inches, like right between 4¼ inches, almost approaching 4.5, but not quite, or a little over 11 centimeters. Not the best measurement in the world, but for a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect A human being next to our Simba version of the Carnotaurus. And you can see the Carnotaurus is very small, and that's pretty much the case for all of these Simba dinosaur figures. They have that Adventure Force style and feel, but they don't have the size. Obviously, they are a much smaller size. And again, the same deal when we bring in a Mattel Velociraptor and Dilophosaurus. You can very clearly see that, again, they're very much so the same size, very similar in size overall. And if we actually bring in the Simba Giganotosaurus next to the Simba Carnotaurus, you can see those as well are pretty much the same size. So there's definitely no scale going on here. They are pretty close to the same size continuously when it comes to these figures. I did want to bring in the Papo Carnotaurus, though, for a size next to the Simba version, just to give you an idea of the fact that they are actually really quite similar in size overall. And I also wanted to point one thing out to you guys. As far as the Carnotaurus goes, again, I did show you that it does have jaw articulation, but it does also have leg articulation, just like the Giga did. You can see we can articulate that leg back pretty far. It could actually go all the way up. Backwards isn't the problem, it's forward. That's as far forward as it'll go. Same deal with this leg. That's as far forward as it goes over here. But again, it can go up pretty high and give you a very goofy look. But the leg articulation works nicely going backward, not so nice going forward. So this Simba version of the Carnotaurus is another kind of fun figure. For some reason, I just really enjoy the style of these. They have that gritty kind of look and feel to them, but also just kind of a fun look and feel. Even though they are very clearly not based on scientific accuracy, they are definitely loosely based on the Jurassic World figures. Well, this one's loosely based, I would say. The Giganotosaurus is very much so based on the Dominion version. But the look is also quite unique and quite original. Has a very big bulky look and feel, especially in the neck of the Carnotaurus, and again has that almost movie monster style to it. The sculpt is pretty decently done when it comes to fine detail, though. It's not amazing. You know, the skin texture looks kind of generic, but at the same time doesn't look that bad on the figure as a whole. The only area that I would say looks really bad as far as the sculpt goes, it's the teeth. Continuously on these figures, it seems to be the teeth. So the teeth don't look very good, but outside of that, when it comes to the fine detail, I think it looks all right through the course of the figure. The paintwork is also mostly all right, because the inconsistencies between one leg to the other is a little bit of a downside. The teeth are really sloppily painted, and the nails aren't really that well done either. Some of them are missing paint for the most part entirely. But the actual application of the reddish tone and the brownish tone and the, patterning through does look quite nice, quite natural, and the transitions between colors is pretty smooth as well. And of course you combine that with the fact that you have a little articulation with the jaw and legs, and that's pretty fun as well. The figure doesn't balance nicely, which is a bummer, but it still is, in my opinion, kind of a neat little Carnotaurus figure. So as I had mentioned in the Giganotosaurus review, these figures are actually from Germany, so I don't really know how to tell you guys to get a hold of them. I will include a link to a website that does feature these from Germany, and maybe they ship to the United States, or you can get somebody that you may know from Germany to get them for you. I don't really know, but if you do have the chance to get a hold of them, definitely pick it up because it's a pretty fun figure. So I want to give a thank you again to Paleopart for acquiring all of these figures for me. Very kind of him to do something like that, and of course send them my way. So a massive thank you goes out to Paleopart. And again, if you have the chance to grab this, like I said, I would grab it because it's still kind of a fun Carnotaurus. And of course, like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.